South African Union of Students says the latest increase in interest rates will serve to deepen the devastation and suffering of the poor and working class. Just yesterday, the Reserve Bank Governor announced a 7.4% repo rate increase. To talk about the repercussions and the impact on so many South Africans, I'm joined by the union's Asive Dlanjwa from Bloemfontein. Asive, thank you so much for your time this evening. It's just getting worse, isn't it? And the announcement yesterday from the Reserve Bank, obviously explained by the Reserve Bank Governor as to why they're doing it now. But that will come as cold comfort to so many South Africans who are already struggling to hold on to the breadline. You speak on behalf of students, so many of whom already have to ration themselves in terms of meals and don't always have decent places to stay. And now the little that they have will become even less. Just your initial reaction to this cost of living crisis that our country finds itself in.
Good evening, Marcel, and to your viewers, and thank you for having us. Marcel, you've accurately captured what we are going through. The reality of the fact of the matter is that we're in a crisis. We're in a crisis, and we could not agree more with the former president, President Thabo Mbeki. In fact, ourselves, in a statement that we issued 2 weeks ago, we said our biggest concern was not so much the challenges that we're facing as a country, but what appears to be no sense of direction or leadership in terms of dealing with these issues from the side of government. We said in our statement there does not seem to be any perceivable plan that is tangible that will begin to turn these things around. I do not think the challenges that we are facing as a nation are necessarily peculiar to us, as we understand that some of the pressures, economic pressures are global in nature. But the unfortunate part is that there does not seem to be a plan from government that is tangible and that we can agree on to turn things around. So I think that is probably what is probably most frustrating about this. You are 100% correct. The rise in inflation by 7.4% that was announced about 2 days ago is absolutely going to be devastating for the poor and for the working class, particularly our students. If you look at some of the items that have contributed to this increase, items such as bread and cereals, which were, I think the increase was about 11.2%, meat 9.5%, polony 19%, and obviously oils 35%. These are all things that are critical in the stable diet of our students. So we are very much concerned about this and the impact that is going to have on the poor and the working class.
Now, in your statement, you do commend the Department of Higher Education and Training for the work that's being done in supporting students, particularly through its higher health arm and other related divisions, which are positioned to respond to the social ramifications and spillouts from the economic duress and constraints the country finds itself in. Be that as it may, however, can you share with us just some of the stories that you're hearing from your student members about how they are struggling from day to day to keep at least some kind of bread on the table while they try and keep their marks up as well?
Let me paint a scenario for you, Marcel. Our students, whom the majority of are from poor and working class backgrounds, receive NSFAS, which I suppose all of us will welcome. But the reality is that the families that they come from live in absolute abject poverty. And because of that, these students have had to take their allowance monies. A lot of them, this is not an isolated incident or an exception. A lot of them, many of them, use their allowances and they send it back home to be able to support their families back home. And they keep whatever they are able to keep. Now, with the inflation, whatever they are sending home will probably in fact has had to increase, but also that which is left for them to spend has absolutely diminished. So that is firstly the scenario. Then, because obviously inflation, the prices have been inflating and going up, that which they could afford with that which they had, they were given, they can no longer afford that. A classic example has been the issue of cooking oil. It might seem minor to other people, but this has been really, really critical for our students. They are not able to afford now basic things. Bread has gone up significantly. There are challenges with that. So all of these things, the reality is that they have not been able to meet their basic needs. And what it is, another impact that this has had has been with transport costs. We spoke with you a few weeks ago when you said also the energy crisis that we're having, or at least in terms of the fuel increases, is also knocking on the students, because almost 70% of our students live off campus and they have to commute to their institutions of higher learning. And with taxi fares having ballooned up and bus fares, etc., this has meant that whatever little allowances they've been getting is now not able to secure for them food in terms of nutrition, but also in terms of transport and getting to and getting to campus. And what this has done, which is very critical, is that it has exposed them. We have heard stories such as this, especially of late. It has exposed them to all sorts of vulnerabilities and exploitation that included but not limited to abductions, sexual assault, gender-based violence, and ultimately, as we saw a few months ago in East London, femicide. So the reality is that all of these things, unless we are we deal with it and government comes up with a plan, we are going to have a crisis that is far beyond economic in nature, but that is social. Because now we are seeing that the basic human rights of our students and the poor and the working class have been compromised by what appears to be redundancy or a lack of inspiration and ideas from our government to be able to deal with the challenges that we are facing. It can't be that.
Asive, if I could come in there on that note, because unfortunately we are running out of time, but on that note, I want to take you back to a comment you made right at the start when you referenced former President Thabo Mbeki's comments made yesterday on a very public platform, where he warned that South Africa might find itself in the grips of its own Arab Spring. And you and I both know that the Arab Spring was very much led by young people and by the student bodies in those Arab countries that were at the core of the movement. Do you agree with the former president that we're on the brink of something similar happening? And how would you see that playing out if that is how far so many of our young people are pushed as they struggle to make their way forward and to improve their lives because of the high unemployment rate and because of the devastating poverty that they continue to live in?
We 100% agree, Marcel. In fact, as a matter of fact, in our statement that we released, as I said 2 weeks ago, we also warned of the same thing, that what we are seeing is a precipitation towards a state of anarchy and a state of social unrest. Because our understanding is that when government omits its responsibility to serve its society, or commits crimes of human rights violations against its people, the only logical response from the people is that they are in fact, government, by doing that, they are breeding a lawless society. So science and studies have told us that when these things happen, one of the things that will begin to happen is that you are going to create even room for opportunists who are going to bring about serious social instability in the country. And besides that, we are confident that we are heading for a revolution. We are heading for a revolution, and maybe it's about time, because it cannot be that almost 30 years after democracy, we find ourselves here, and that there does not seem to be. Our problem, Marcel, is that we need to be brought into confidence as students, but as all of us, as the poor and the working class, that these are the plans that government has to turn the situation around. Or else, because we cannot have people not being able to go pick up their medication, Marcel, in clinics because they cannot afford the taxi fare, people not being able to eat. For how long must this carry on? We completely agree with the former President Thabo Mbeki that unless these things are dealt with, we are headed for a very, very brink and a very dark time in the history of our democratic dispensation.
We're going to leave it there. That's South African Union of Students, Asive Dlandwa, joining us live there from Bloemfontein.